I'm just asking, do you agree with that interpretation? That's all.
It's the individuality of the persons as known by us. So it has nothing. Incarnation is not what lets us know or what conditions the distinctions in the triad.
We'll kick it over to Jay for his 7 minutes to interrogate Jake. The floor is yours.
Jake, earlier when you were talking about your view of epistemology and whatnot, do you agree with the position of Ibn Taymiyyah as related on page 196 of the Suleiman book that the principles of reasoning are self-evident truths?
I would have to look at the reference, but define self-evident.
Not relying on anything else to be the case.
I believe that they are known directly through the fitra.
And that is what?
What I explained before, similar to the
What
noose.
is what? What is what?
I said I explained it before, similar to the noose.
Okay, so every individual in an inner sense just knows self-evidently that what? The law of logic is true? The laws of logic are true?
He knows that certain principles like that a half is less than a whole, he knows these things directly, not through some type of inference.
So are they self-evident?
Self-evident only in the sense that he knows them directly through the fitra.
Okay, so they don't rely on...
They're not from an inference.
So they don't rely on anything else to be true.
They rely on God to exist to create us with that fitra.
Hold on, we
apparatus.
don't know that that's the case yet. So you do believe they're self-evident?
I know. I said they're not self-evident in the sense that you're
to human perception.
They're not dependent on human perception. They're prior to.
I didn't say are they dependent. I said are they self-evident to human perception?
They're self-evident in the sense that they are known directly through the fitra as an apparatus.
Okay, so how do we adjudicate between the things that are self-evident and the things that aren't?
By the fact of our existence, we know that, for example, a half is greater than a whole.
And that's a fallacy. So that's a fallacy.
I mean, sorry, a whole is greater than a half.
Yeah, that's a fallacy. Appealing to existence doesn't justify the truths.
I explained to you how. It's because we know them directly through the fitra.
So we know them because we know them. So that's a circle.
No, it isn't. I explained how we know them.
You just said we know them because we exist and experience them. That's a circle.
No, I said that we experience them through the apparatus of the fitra, which God has created human beings upon.
Yeah, but how do we know the difference between those and the non-self-evident truths is what I asked you. You said by existence.
Because they're self-evident, as you just said.
Oh, so now you do believe in self-evidence.
Self-evident in the sense that they're not based upon inference.
And how do we know those distinct from the ones that aren't?
Because you know when you make an inference and when you don't. And if you don't, then you got a big
we just
problem.
know. So reality is reality. So Tito, did you get this from T-Jump?
Do you know the difference between when you're making an inference and when you're not?
I'm asking you questions, not you.
Exactly. Right. So I'm telling you, we know the difference between when we make an inference and when we don't make an inference.
Yeah, but that's not answering the question. I'm asking for the justification for the division between the self-referential and the non-self-referential. What's the justification?
The justification is that the self-referential, which you're talking about, the self-evident ones, do not rely upon inference where other.
So they're self-evident because they're self-evident.
They're self-evident because they don't rely on inference. And you're asking, how do we know that?
Because they're self-evident.
How do we know that? Because when I make an argument, and I appeal to an inference rule, I know that I'm appealing to an inference rule.
So that's a circle, Jake. This is a basic epistemology problem for your empiricism.
Do you have a question, sir?
Oh, exactly.
You have a question.
You ready for me to move on?
I'm asking you if you have a question.
So how do we know the difference between the self-referential,
I already answered your question.
And the non?
I already answered your question.
No, you didn't. You just restated that.
No, you said, how do we know that they're self-evident?
How do we know the difference?
How do we know?
It's called the criteria problem.
No, how do we know?
Yes, it is. It's called the criteria. Are you familiar with the criteria problem?
I'm not answering that. I know what the criterion problem is.
Okay, and what is it?
That's not my point. I'm saying to you.
That's my question. So that's why you're saying it's not your point.
And I'm saying to you that you're asking me, how do I know the difference between what's self-evident and what is known through an inference?
No, between what's not self-evident.
Right. And the opposite of not being self-evident is something that is known through.
So you're in the criterion problem, Jake. You're giggling.
I've explained it 3 times. It's very
No,
simple
you
to
explained
understand.
it, but it's not answering the criterion problem. Do you
If
know
you
what
don't
it
know,
is?
if you don't know the difference,
Do you know what the
between-
criterion
if you-
problem is?
I already answered that question.
Do you know what the problem is?
Yes,
What is it?
I do. You just
What is
explained the
it?
problem to me.
Moderator, he won't answer. Do you know who's associated with it?
Who's associated with what?
The criteria problem.
It's a problem in epistemology.
Yeah. Who's associated with it?
I don't know who the origin
You're right.
of it
So it's
is.
David Chisholm. So how do you answer the criteria problem?
I'm giving you an answer.
No,
I've
you
been
didn't.
doing it for the past 5 minutes.
So you'll
You keep
notice in the
repeating-
debate,
you
Jake
keep
just
repeating the
talks
same-
and he doesn't
you've been-
answer the objection.
No, I
and he
asked-
says
I
that it's
answered the
self-evident because
question.
it's self-evident.
No, I never said that. Never
You did
said
say that. Everybody heard him say it's self-evident because it exists. And
That's
we
not what I
don't.
said.
That is what
You
you
said,
said.
how do we know? And I said, we know it through a divinely created apparatus.
Well,
That's how we
but
know it.
We don't
know
know
it
that yet.
directly.
This is your starting point.
What do you mean?
We're talking about starting points. You're appealing to divine apparatuses. I'm talking about the starting point.
No, I'm saying that according to our epistemology,
Mhm.
the fitra is how we know these things, and we know that because we're created upon it.
Yeah, but the question is about, do you know that you're created that way? And you're just saying, well, we're made that way. That's my question.
Yeah, I'm saying we know we're created because we have a direct experience.
No, I'm asking about the principles of reason themselves. And you
Yes.
said you believe in self-evidence. And then I said, okay. And then I asked you the criterion problem, and you haven't answered the criterion problem. You keep talking around it.
I've answered your question
you haven't.
several times.
Your answer was circular.
Explain the circle.
Because you said that, well, I know it's self-evident because it's self-evident. And when I'm not doing something, that's an inference. That's not answering the criterion problem.
No, you asked how do I know it? What's the justification?
I asked it- You don't even understand the question. Do you want me to state the question again?
I
So what
explained
is
the justification.
What is the justification for the belief that you know the difference between the self-evident ones and the non-self-evident ones? So the criteria problem is saying that you have a more fundamental criteria by which you cash out these 2 different things and put them into different classes. How do you know that more fundamental Chisholm issue is what I'm asking?
Yeah, and I'm repeating the same exact answer. We know it based on the fact that we are created by God with a direct experience of those things.
That's a circle that doesn't justify the criteria problem. That doesn't tell us, Jake, that doesn't tell us that we know the fundamental criteria is the case.
We were out of time, but we've got to kick it over to Jake to interrogate Jay, and this is our final set. So we'll have one 7-minute section of Jake interrogating Jay, and then one last interrogation of Jay on Jake. With that, Jake, the floor is all yours.
Sorry about that. I'm just getting my notes up here.
No problem. Folks, if you haven't yet, check out our guests linked below. There's a value in hearing their positions firsthand from them. This debate is a great introduction to their views, but check out their channels. That includes the podcast. We've linked both of our guests below.
Okay, I'm ready.
Ready.
Okay, Jay, do you have an argument or justification for the claim that the Trinity and Orthodox theology, or the Orthodox Church specifically, is a precondition for rationality, intelligibility, and all the other transcendental categories? Do you have an argument and justification for that?
Yes.
What is it?
It's a 2-parter. Can I explain it?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the first part is that it's a reductio ad absurdum argument when you deny it. This is called retorsion in Aristotelian argumentation. And the second part of the argument is to posit the Christian worldview as the way to ground the transcendental categories that are the preconditions for all possible knowledge.
Yeah, you're saying to posit them, but what's the justification for the claim that it is the only system that can account for those things? Is there, do you provide arguments or not?
Retorsion, correct. The first one is retorsion.
Okay, explain what retorsion is.
Do you know, you're Jake the Muslim Metaphysician.
I know what it is, but I've actually seen in your,
okay, what is it?
I've actually seen in your videos.
Okay, what is it?
You're not asking me questions, I'm asking you questions. You've explained in your videos that you critique the Thomists when they bring up the issue of retorsion. So can you explain it and explain how when they use it, they're not justified in doing so, but you are?
Because they're classical foundationalists like you, and it's a reductio argument.
I'm not a classical foundationalist. Now, it's a reductio.
You are. You are.
I'm not a classical foundationalist.
You are.
So you're going to tell me my own epistemology.
I mean, the
So-
way you argued in the last
No,
comment, in the last section shows
I'm
you
not
are.
a classical foundationalist.
The way
Now,
you just argued proves
again,
it.
I'm going to ask
You believe in
I'm
self-evident
gonna-
truths.
I'm going to ask you again, Jay.
You believe in self-evident truths, so
Jay,
you're lying.
I'm asking
Now you're
you a
lying because
question.
you
I'm
are
asking.
foundation.
I'm
All right, just
asking
let's
you
give-
questions, Jay. Yeah, I'm supposed to be asking him questions, just to be clear. Okay, Jay. Again, I'm going to ask you, when you critique the Thomist, you're saying the only reason is because they're a classical foundationalist and you're not. How does that affect the legitimacy of them making the same move that you are?
Because like you, they don't understand a meta level argument.
Okay, so why don't you explain it to us other than making a claim?
I didn't make a claim. I said that the first part of the argument is reductio, or retorsion argument, showing the absurdity of that worldview. And then the second part of the argument is to show and argue that only the Orthodox Christian metaphysic, epistemology, and ethic can ground the transcendental categories that are the preconditions for any possible knowledge.
Okay, so there's two parts to it, Jay. Let's deal
Correct.
with the first part. Does the first part alone give justification for the claim that the Orthodox theological positions are the only justification for the preconditions of intelligibility and all the other transcendental categories?
No, all retorsion shows is that the other position is absurd.
Okay, so it only shows that that position is absurd. So that doesn't justify it. So the second part is positing the Orthodox position. But that's
Right.
the very thing that we're asking for. What is
Right.
the justification for the claim that the Orthodox position alone justifies the preconditions of intelligibility?
Correct.
So what is it? You're just restating the claim. You're not giving an argument.
No, you're confusing a first order argument with a meta level argument. It's a category error.
You keep saying I'm confusing and you're making
Right.
claims, but then you're never giving any content to your claim.
I just stated the content, you just don't understand it.
Divinity raises the humanity in Christ through theosis, and that's exactly what we experience.